Have you ever watched someone lose everything they loved? Not because they did wrong, but because someone couldn't see their worth? That was Evelyn's life the morning her stepdaughter, Maya, told her to get out. Evelyn stood at the kitchen counter, wiping her hands on a towel that still smelled faintly of cinnamon rolls. The house was quiet, too quiet for a home that once rang with laughter. She heard the door slam upstairs. Maya's heels hammered down the staircase. "Don't you dare touch Mom's recipe book." Maya's voice sliced through the silence. Evelyn froze. "Sweetheart, I was just putting it back where—" "Don't call me sweetheart!" Maya's face was red, eyes blazing with a mix of grief and resentment. "You're not my mother. You never will be." The words hit like glass shattering. From the living room, Thomas, Evelyn's husband and Maya's father, looked up from his laptop. "Maya, please, enough." But Maya wasn't listening. She stormed toward the counter, yanking the cookbook from Evelyn's hands. "You think you can come in here, replace her, and play perfect wife?" Evelyn's voice trembled. "I'm not trying to replace anyone. I just leave." Maya's hands shook, clutching the book to her chest. "You've been living in her house, touching her things, cooking with her pans. You don't belong here." Thomas stood now. "Maya." But Evelyn shook her head gently. "It's all right, Tom." She turned toward her stepdaughter, the faintest smile softening her lips. "If leaving makes you feel better, I can do that." Maya scoffed, bitter satisfaction flickering in her eyes. "Good. Then leave the house keys before you go." A silence heavier than grief filled the room. Evelyn reached into her purse, pulled out the keys and placed them on the counter. The tiny clink echoed like a closing chapter. She looked at Thomas one last time. "Take care of her. She's hurting more than she knows." Then she walked out, leaving behind a kitchen that still smelled of cinnamon, and a man torn between two halves of his heart. Outside, the cold wind pressed against Evelyn's face. She clutched her coat tighter, blinking back tears. She didn't have anywhere to go, but she'd been through worse. Much worse. Because long before she was the stepmom, Evelyn had been Sergeant Evelyn Grace, a combat medic who saved lives in places where the ground never stopped shaking. But no one in this town knew that. To Maya, she was just Dad's second wife. To Thomas's family, she was the outsider. Evelyn reached the corner of the street, sat on the bench, and exhaled slowly. She whispered to herself, "Maybe they'll be better without me." But somewhere deep inside, she knew the truth. The people who hurt you most often have no idea who you really are. Mini cliffhanger. Across town, an old contact scrolled through his phone, staring at a message from an unknown number. "Need help." "It's Evelyn Grace." His eyes widened. "No way." "Sergeant Grace?" He turned to the barracks behind him, rows of disciplined men, a symbol of brotherhood. "Boys," he said with a grin, "looks like the sergeant needs us again." The barracks were still humming from the morning drills when Corporal Jake Mendez saw the text, "Need help." "It's Evelyn Grace." For a second he thought it was a joke. Evelyn Grace, the medic who had patched him up in Kandahar, who had marched 12 miles through sand with a busted knee just to drag 2 men to safety, wasn't the kind of woman who asked for help. She gave it. He called across the yard. "Harris, Dawson! You remember Sergeant Grace?" 15 heads turned. 15 memories lit behind tired eyes. Within minutes, the noise of the base changed from casual chatter to purpose. Boots hit the ground, car doors slammed, and an old loyalty reawakened. Across town, Evelyn sat on a park bench with a paper cup of coffee she couldn't bring herself to drink. The sun was bright, but it felt distant. She scrolled through her contacts and hovered over Thomas's number, then sighed and locked the screen. "He's torn." "Don't make it harder." A little girl chasing pigeons stopped near her and smiled. "Are you okay, lady?" Evelyn forced a small grin. "Just thinking." The child giggled and ran back to her mother. Evelyn watched them go, that easy bond between parent and child twisting her heart. She had tried for years to reach Maya, to build something fragile but real. Every attempt had ended the same way, cold distance, polite silence, or open anger. She still remembered the day she married Thomas, how Maya refused to attend, leaving an empty chair beside him in every photo. "She'll come around," Thomas had whispered back then. 3 years later, She still hadn't. Evelyn pulled out her phone again and typed a short message. Just needed to hear a friendly voice. Things got bad at home. She hit send before she could change her mind. At that same moment, Maya was pacing the living room. The anger that had felt so righteous an hour ago now sat heavy in her stomach. She glanced at the cookbook on the table, her mother's, handwriting looping across faded pages, and told herself she had done the right thing, Dad. Needed to remember Mom. He's forgetting her because of that woman. Thomas entered quietly. Maya, what happened was cruel. She was taking over everything. Maya's voice cracked. You don't even see it. Thomas rubbed his temples. All she ever tried to do was make this house a home again. Maya crossed her arms, turning away. You wouldn't understand. He looked at his daughter for a long moment, the same way a soldier studies a map he no longer recognizes. Maybe not. But one day, you'll wish you'd treated kindness differently. Back at the park, a motorcycle's low rumble broke the stillness. Evelyn glanced up as a single rider stopped near the curb. The man lifted his helmet, revealing a familiar grin. Sergeant Grace, Jake Mendez said, saluting playfully. Heard you needed a little backup. Evelyn blinked in disbelief. Jake? How did you? Group chat never died. He handed her a folded envelope. Inside was a simple note signed by 14 other names she hadn't seen in years. Once family, always family. She pressed the letter to her chest. The first tear she'd allowed herself all day slipped free. Jake looked toward the quiet neighborhood behind her. You just tell us where, ma'am. We'll handle the rest. Evelyn shook her head gently. No one needs handling, Jake. I just needed to remember I'm not alone. He smiled. We'll still swing by, respectfully. The next morning, the neighborhood woke to the quiet hum of gossip. Mrs. Collins, who lived 3 houses down, had seen it all from her window. The shouting, the slammed door, the woman with the small suitcase walking down the street alone. By sunrise, the story had stretched and twisted its way through every group chat in town. Thomas's new wife was thrown out. The daughter said she's taking back her mother's house. Poor woman. She never stood a chance with that girl. By noon, even the cafe clerk downtown was telling customers that the stepmom's gone. Maya didn't care. At least that's what she told herself. She sat at the kitchen table, arms folded, staring at the cold cup of coffee Evelyn had made before she left. The smell still lingered, vanilla and cinnamon. It made her furious that she missed it. Thomas came in quietly, holding his phone. She texted me. Maya's head snapped up. Evelyn? He nodded. Just said she's safe. Asked me not to worry. That's nice, Maya muttered, staring at the table. Maybe she'll stay gone, Thomas sighed. Maya, you don't know what you've done. She took your life over, Dad. You couldn't even cook Mom's favorite dish without her changing it. Changing it isn't erasing it, he said softly. You only see what you lost, not what she was giving. The words hung heavy between them. For the first time, Maya didn't answer. Across town, Evelyn sat at the diner with Jake. The waitress brought 2 mugs of black coffee and a smile that said she remembered them from somewhere. You look familiar, she said. You used to be in uniform, didn't you? Evelyn smiled faintly. Once upon a time, Jake leaned in, voice low. You sure you don't want us to swing by the house? Evelyn shook her head. I don't want a scene. They need time. Ma'am, 15 Marines showing up at a door isn't a scene, it's a statement. He grinned, trying to lighten the mood, but his eyes stayed serious. You pulled us out of a battlefield once. Let us return the favor. Evelyn looked out the window, the afternoon sun glinting off a row of parked motorcycles across the street. If you do come, she said finally, make it gentle. Jake chuckled. Gentle Marines. That'll be a first. That evening, Maya sat in her room scrolling through social media, ignoring the quiet knock at her door. Maya, Thomas said softly. Dinner's ready. Not hungry. She made that cinnamon chicken for you once, remember? The one you said tasted like Mom's recipe? Maya looked up. Why are you defending her? Because she's earned it, he said simply. You don't know everything about her. Maya frowned. What are you talking about? Thomas hesitated, then handed her an old photo he'd pulled from his drawer. It showed Evelyn in combat gear, sand whipping through her hair, a patch on her arm that read, U.S. Marines, Medical Division. She served, he said quietly. She saved lives. Maya stared at the photo, the ground shifting beneath her anger. You mean she was in the military? 15 men owe their lives to her, Thomas said. I thought you knew. Maya swallowed hard, her throat dry. I didn't. Maybe it's time you did. That night, Maya lay awake, replaying every harsh word she'd thrown at Evelyn. The yelling, the slammed doors, the hurt in her father's eyes. Shame crawled under her skin. She whispered into the dark, What have I done? Outside, the sound of engines echoed faintly in the distance. 15 motorcycles rumbling together, heading slowly toward the quiet neighborhood. It was just after 8 p.m. when the quiet suburban street began to tremble. Maya sat up in bed, confused at first by the low, rhythmic rumble that grew louder with every passing second. It wasn't thunder. It was engines, deep, heavy, and in sync, like a heartbeat of steel. Thomas was already at the window. Oh, God, he whispered. Headlights filled the street, 15 motorcycles, lined up perfectly in front of their house, chrome glinting under the street lamps. The engines cut off one by one, leaving a silence so sharp it made the night ring. Then boots hit the pavement. 15 men, each wearing the same worn leather jacket stitched with a Marine insignia, stood shoulder to shoulder. Faces hard, eyes focused. The neighbors began to peek through curtains. Dogs barked. Phones came out to record. And then one man stepped forward. Jake. He removed his helmet, revealing a rugged face and a calm smile that somehow made the entire scene even more intimidating. Evening, sir, he said, addressing Thomas. We're looking for Mrs. Evelyn Carter. Maya froze in the hallway. Her stepmother's name. Her chest tightened. Thomas stepped out onto the porch, bewildered. She's not here, Jake nodded. We know. She called us. Called you? Maya whispered. Jake looked straight at her. You must be Maya. She felt her stomach twist. How do you know my name? Because she never stops talking about you, Jake said with a quiet smile. Says you've got your father's stubborn streak and your mother's fire. She loves that about you. Maya's throat went dry. She said that? Jake nodded. Then, motioning to the others, he continued. We're here because that woman you threw out once saved every single one of our lives. She was our combat medic. The reason 15 men made it home. Thomas's mouth fell open. Maya couldn't move. Jake reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She told us not to come. Said you both needed peace, he smirked. But Marines aren't good at following orders when family's involved. He handed the paper to Thomas, who unfolded it slowly. Evelyn's handwriting covered the page. Thomas, if they come, it's because they care. Tell Maya she doesn't owe me an apology, just understanding. I've already forgiven her. Love, Evelyn. Thomas swallowed hard, eyes wet. Where is she? Jake exhaled. At the old diner on Route 7. Said she'd wait there until morning. Maya blinked back tears. I didn't know. I thought she was trying to replace Mom. Jake shook his head. No, she was trying to honor her. She said your mom saved her once, during basic training, gave her hope when she was ready to quit. She said meeting you was like getting a second chance to thank her. Maya's heart shattered quietly. She never told me. She didn't want your love out of pity, Jake said. She wanted to earn it. The street had fallen completely silent now. Even the neighbors watching from their windows seemed to hold their breath. Jake turned to the men behind him. Let's show them something. 15 Marines straightened their backs, forming a perfect line across the lawn. In one unified motion, they raised their hands to their brows and saluted the house. For the woman who saved us, Jake said softly, and for the family she still believes in. Tears finally spilled down Maya's cheeks. Her knees gave out, and Thomas caught her as she whispered, Dad, I have to bring her home. Minutes later, Maya was behind the wheel, engine roaring as she sped toward the diner. When she burst through the door, Evelyn was sitting alone at the counter, nursing a cup of coffee gone cold. She turned slowly, surprise flickering into a gentle smile. Maya, she said softly. Maya ran straight to her, arms wrapping around her in a trembling hug. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I was wrong. I didn't know who you were. What you did, Evelyn hesitated, then hugged her back, eyes glistening. You don't have to apologize, sweetheart. I understood. No, Maya whispered, pulling back just enough to look her in the eyes. I understand now. They drove home together under a quiet sky. The Marines were still there, engines humming softly like loyal guardians. When Evelyn stepped out of the car, the men saluted again. Jake grinned. Mission accomplished, ma'am. Evelyn smiled, holding Maya's hand tightly. At ease, boys. Families back together. That night, as the house filled with the warmth of forgiveness, Maya placed the photo of her mother beside one of Evelyn in her Marine uniform. Two women, different but both heroes in their own way. Because sometimes, the people we push away are the ones fighting the hardest to protect us. And love. Like honor doesn't vanish, it just waits to be recognized. Because sometimes, it takes the respect of strangers to remind us who our family really was. The morning light drips through half-closed blinds, painting soft lines across the kitchen table. Thomas sits alone, a coffee mug cooling between his palms. The chair across from him stays empty, the one Evelyn used to occupy. Her laughter has been gone for days, yet he still expects to hear it. Maya shuffles in, hair tangled, eyes fixed on her phone. Morning, she mutters. Thomas doesn't answer. He slides an envelope across the table. She left this. Maya looks at it but doesn't touch it. If that's from her, I don't want it. She wrote it for both of us, he says, voice breaking. You should at least read it. She made her choice, Dad. She walked out. She didn't walk out, Maya. You threw her out. The words hit like a slap. Maya folds her arms, trying to hide the sting. Thomas stares at the letter, the handwriting he knows too well. She prayed every night that you'd forgive her someday. Maya shakes her head. Forgive her for what? For trying to replace Mom? No, Thomas says quietly. For loving us, even when we made it impossible. He gets up, leaves the letter on the table, and walks out. Maya sits there for a long time, the paper staring back at her, daring her to open it. Across town, Evelyn stands in the doorway of a small apartment, sunlight warming the dust motes in the air. She's holding an old photo of Maya at 10, missing front teeth, eyes full of mischief. A knock sounds. She wipes her eyes and opens the door to find Dean Ramirez. A broad-shouldered man in a worn leather jacket. Mrs. Miller, he says with a grin. You have no idea how long we've been looking for you. Evelyn blinks. Dean, it's been, 15 years? 15 and a half. But we never forgot. You saved us during that hurricane, remember? She laughs softly. You boys did most of the saving. Dean shakes his head. You gave us your car, ma'am. Said a soldier's life was worth more than a vehicle. We tell that story every year. Evelyn feels her throat tighten. That was a long time ago. Still matters, Dean says. We're having a small memorial next week. The whole team will be there. You have to come. I don't know, Dean. I've got family stuff, please. It'd mean a lot to us. She hesitates, then nods. All right, I'll come. Later that evening, she sits by the window watching the city lights. For the first time in weeks, she feels seen. She doesn't know that across town. 15 Marines are already messaging one another, sharing her address, planning a surprise reunion. Back in the house, Thomas cleans the study. An old drawer jams, and when he tugs it open, another letter slips out, older, yellowed around the edges. He unfolds it carefully. If you ever wonder why I stayed through the shouting and silence, it's because I loved this family enough to be hated for it. His eyes sting. He reads it again, slower this time, realizing how blind he's been. Maya walks in and freezes at the sight of him crying. Dad, he hands her the letter. She takes it, reads, and the words unravel her defenses. She wrote this? She wrote everything, Thomas says. We just never looked close enough. Maya presses the paper to her chest, but pride still whispers in her ear. Even if she meant it, she's gone now. Thomas nods. Maybe not for long. The next day, Evelyn meets Dean and a few of the men at a small diner near the base. The moment she walks in, the chatter stops. Heads turn, smiles spread. Mrs. Miller, one of them calls. The legend herself, she blushes. Please don't start with that. You think we forgot? You waded into a flood for us. They raise their cups in an impromptu toast. To Evelyn Miller, the bravest civilian we know. She laughs, shaking her head. I'm no hero, Dean leans forward. Maybe not to you. But to us, you were the reason we came home. The laughter fades into comfortable silence. Dean studies her face. You look tired. Everything okay? She hesitates. Just family things. My stepdaughter and I. We didn't end well. After everything you've done for people? He says, disbelief rising. They're not bad people, just hurting. Losing her mom left scars. Dean nods slowly. Still doesn't excuse it, Evelyn sighs. I just hope one day she realizes I wasn't trying to replace anyone. Dean's jaw tightens. Then maybe it's time someone reminded her who you really are. She smiles faintly. Dean, please don't. He lifts a hand. We'll keep it respectful. But you deserve to be treated right. That night, she falls asleep, not knowing what he means. Dean drives back to the base and sends a message to the group. She's alone. Not okay. Time to pay back the debt. Morning comes quietly to Thomas's house. The doorbell rings. Maya answers, half awake, expecting a delivery. She opens the door and freezes. 15 men in uniform stand before her, straight-backed, solemn. One steps forward. Good morning, ma'am. We're looking for Mrs. Evelyn Miller. She used to live here. Maya swallows. She doesn't anymore. Why? He glances at the others. We wanted to thank her. She saved our lives. Thomas joins her at the door, confusion creasing his brow. You must be mistaken. The man shakes his head. No mistake, sir. 15 years ago, during the hurricane evacuation, your wife risked her life to get us to safety. We wouldn't be here without her. Thomas's hands tremble. She never told us. She never tells anyone, the Marine replies. That's the kind of person she is. Maya feels the blood drain from her face. She saved you? Yes, ma'am. 3 of us were trapped when the levee broke. She gave us her car and went back for 2 more men. We've been trying to find her ever since. Thomas leans against the doorframe, overcome. I had no idea. The Marine's expression softens. We'd like to find her now, sir. If you could tell us where she's staying. Maya can barely speak. Her throat closes as guilt crashes through her. She's at the Maplewood Apartments. Unit 12. Thank you, the Marine says, tipping his cap. We'll make sure she knows she's never alone. As they march away, the sound of their boots echoes down the street, steady and deliberate. Neighbors peek through curtains, whispering. Thomas turns to his daughter, voice trembling. What did we do, Maya? She doesn't answer. She stares after the men until they disappear, then finally opens Evelyn's first letter. Her hands shake as she reads about patience, forgiveness, love that doesn't quit. By the end, her tears blur the ink. She whispers, Dad. We have to go to her, he nods. We will. Thomas and Maya drive in silence. The car hums softly, but the tension between them hums louder. Every streetlight they pass feels like judgment. Maya keeps replaying the Marine's words in her head. She gave us her car. Went back for 2 more men. The woman she had screamed at, thrown out, had once faced death to save strangers. Thomas grips the steering wheel until his knuckles whiten. All these years she never said a word. Maya stares out the window, because she wasn't trying to prove anything. She was just good. They pull up to Maplewood Apartments, a modest brick building with peeling paint. When Evelyn opens the door, surprise flashes across her face, followed by the kind of tired smile that comes from expecting disappointment and getting it too often. Maya, she says softly. Thomas, Maya's throat closes. She wants to speak, but guilt tangles her words. Thomas clears his throat. We had visitors this morning. Evelyn looks confused. Visitors? 15 Marines. They told us what you did. Her hand flies to her mouth. Oh no, they came to the house? Yes, Thomas says. They wanted to thank you. Evelyn looks down. I didn't do it for thanks. Maya blurts out, Why didn't you tell us? Evelyn's voice trembles. Would it have mattered? You already decided what kind of person I was. The words sting, but Maya nods. You're right. I did. The silence stretches until Thomas finally says, They said you saved their lives. You risked everything. Evelyn shrugs, eyes glistening. People needed help. That's all. Maya steps closer. And I threw you out. Evelyn wipes her cheek. You were angry. Grief makes people cruel. I knew that. Maya shakes her head. No excuse. Her voice breaks. I wanted to hurt you because you were kind when I wasn't ready to be loved again. Evelyn reaches out, her touch hesitant but steady. I loved you anyway. The words undo Maya. She collapses into Evelyn's arms, sobbing into her shoulder. Thomas turns away, wiping his eyes. For a long moment, the three of them just stand there, holding on to what's left of the family they almost destroyed. When they finally pull apart, Evelyn laughs weakly. You both look like you haven't eaten in days. Sit down, Thomas manages a smile. Same old Evelyn, feeding people before forgiving them. She sets tea on the table. The quiet between them feels different now. No longer sharp, just fragile. Then a knock interrupts the peace. Evelyn opens the door and freezes again. The Marines are back, lined up neatly on the walkway, every one of them holding something. Flowers, groceries, a framed certificate. Dean steps forward. Ma'am, we wanted to do this properly. He hands her the frame. Inside, a letter of gratitude signed by the entire unit. To Evelyn Miller, whose courage reminded us what humanity means. Her eyes fill with tears. You didn't have to. We did, Dean says. You saved us once. Now it's our turn. He nods to two men behind him. They wheel forward a large box. Inside are groceries, blankets, and envelopes sealed with official insignias. Evelyn shakes her head. This is too much, Dean smiles. You gave us your car. Call this an even trade. Maya steps beside her, still tear-streaked but standing tall. Thank you for showing me who she really is. Dean glances at her kindly. She didn't need us to prove it. But sometimes the world needs witnesses. The men salute her, one by one, then turn to leave. Before they go, Dean says to Thomas, Sir, take care of her. People like that are rare, Thomas nods. I will. When the Marines disappear down the street, the small courtyard feels brighter. Evelyn stands motionless, the frame pressed to her chest. Maya whispers, Mom would have liked you. Evelyn turns, startled. What did you say? I think she would have liked you, Maya repeats. And I'm sorry it took me this long to see it. Evelyn pulls her into another embrace. It's enough that you see it now. Thomas joins them, his arm around both women. Let's go home. They drive back as the sun sets, golden light washing the street in forgiveness. When they enter the house, the empty chair no longer feels like a wound. Evelyn sets the frame on the mantel beside a photo of Maya's mother. For the first time, the two women's faces look at peace together. Maya brews tea again, her hands steady this time. She'd probably laugh at all this drama, she says. Evelyn smiles. She'd say it was about time you stopped fighting with people who care. They laugh softly. The sound easy, familiar. Outside, a neighbor walks past, pointing out the line of boot prints still visible on the walkway. 15 perfect marks fading into the dust, proof that Grace had walked up to their door. Later that night, Maya sits alone on the porch. The letter lies open on her lap, the last line illuminated by the porch light. Love doesn't keep score, it keeps showing up. She looks through the window where Evelyn and Thomas are laughing in the kitchen, and for the first time since her mother's death, she feels whole. She whispers into the quiet, Thank you for showing up. 3 days had passed since the Marines' visit, but the echoes of their boots still seemed to linger in the hallway. Maya found herself pausing in front of the framed letter every morning, running her fingers across the glass like it was a living thing. The guilt hadn't vanished, but something new had taken its place, a quiet kind of pride. Evelyn had moved back in. Not because Thomas insisted, but because Maya had asked. The invitation had come out awkwardly, over tea that had gone cold. This house, it's empty without you, Maya had whispered. Evelyn had looked at her for a long time, searching for sincerity. When she finally nodded, both women cried without saying another word. Now the three of them were learning to live together, carefully, like people who had seen how easily love could shatter. On Sunday morning, the smell of pancakes filled the house. Evelyn hummed while flipping them, wearing an apron that used to belong to Maya's mom. Thomas sat at the table reading the news on his tablet, but he wasn't really reading. He was watching them, the way Maya quietly helped with breakfast, the way Evelyn smiled every time their shoulders brushed. Do you want blueberries or chocolate chips? Evelyn asked. Maya smirked. Both, life's short, Evelyn laughed softly. That's my girl. The words hit Maya like sunlight breaking through clouds. My girl. It had been years since anyone called her that. They sat down together, and for a moment it almost felt normal. 3 people, 1 family, eating pancakes in a house that had seen too much shouting and not enough laughter. Then the doorbell rang. Thomas frowned. Who could that be on a Sunday? Evelyn wiped her hands and opened the door. A man stood there in a pressed uniform, not a Marine, but a reporter. Behind him was a camera crew. Mrs. Miller? He asked politely. I'm with Channel 7 News. We'd like to speak with you about the rescue story. Evelyn blinked. The what? He smiled. The Marine story. It's been all over social media. People are calling you the guardian angel of Fallujah. Thomas stood up, surprised. How did they even find out? The reporter shrugged. The Marines posted about it. Their video has over 8 million views. People want to meet you. Evelyn's face turned pale. Oh no, I don't. I didn't do it for that. Maya touched her arm gently. It's okay. Maybe it's time people saw who you really are. After a moment of hesitation, Evelyn agreed to the interview, but only if they included Thomas and Maya. The crew set up in the living room. Cameras rolled. The reporter began softly. Mrs. Miller, years ago you risked your life to save 15 Marines. Why didn't you ever tell anyone? Evelyn looked straight into the camera. Because I didn't think heroism needed an audience. Sometimes doing the right thing means doing it quietly. The room went still. Maya felt her throat tighten again. The reporter smiled gently. And now, the people you saved wanted to thank you. What was that like? Evelyn took a shaky breath. Overwhelming, humbling. But what moved me most was forgiveness. My family was there. They saw the moment those men walked in. And for me, that was the real miracle. The camera turned to Maya. The reporter asked, You're her stepdaughter, right? What did you think when you heard the story? Maya hesitated. I thought I'd been blind. I pushed away someone who was only trying to love me. But when those Marines knocked on our door, I realized sometimes angels don't have wings. They just show up when you least expect them. The reporter lowered his mic. That's beautiful. Thank you. When the crew left, Evelyn sat down, dazed. 8 million views. That's ridiculous, Thomas smiled. Guess you're famous now. But fame wasn't what followed. It was gratitude. Within days, letters began arriving from across the country. Veterans, widows, teachers, kids who said they were inspired to be brave. One letter came from a woman in Ohio. My husband didn't come back from the war, but thank you for saving someone else's. You're part of my healing too. Evelyn read that one out loud, her voice trembling. I don't deserve all this. Yes, you do, Maya said firmly. Every single word. Thomas added. You didn't just save lives, Evelyn. You reminded people what love looks like when it costs something. The story snowballed. A Veterans Foundation called. They wanted to honor her at a ceremony. Evelyn tried to refuse, but the Marines insisted. Ma'am, Dean said on the phone, it would mean a lot to the men you saved. So, a week later, they drove to the event together. Evelyn wore a simple navy blue dress, the same one she'd worn to Maya's graduation years ago. Maya sat beside her, fidgeting with the hem of her sleeve. You okay? She asked. Evelyn smiled faintly. Nervous. I've never been good at standing still while people clap. Thomas squeezed her hand. Then just imagine you're running back into a burning street again. This will be easy. The auditorium was packed. Veterans in uniform, families holding flags, journalists everywhere. When Evelyn's name was called, the entire room stood up. The applause was thunderous. As she stepped onto the stage, her hands shook. Dean stood waiting with a medal in his hand, his eyes proud and kind. On behalf of the United States Marine Corps, he said, we honor Evelyn Miller for extraordinary courage, selflessness, and compassion. He pinned the medal on her. The crowd erupted. Cameras flashed. Evelyn looked out into the audience, at Thomas, beaming through tears, and at Maya standing tall, her hands clasped over her heart. Then, instead of giving a rehearsed speech, Evelyn spoke from the heart. I'm not a hero, she began softly. Heroes are the ones who don't come back. I just did what anyone should do when someone needs help. But I did learn something. Forgiveness can save as many lives as courage does. She looked directly at Maya. Sometimes the hardest rescue is the one inside our own homes. Maya's lips trembled. She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. When the ceremony ended, journalists swarmed, flashbulbs popping. But Evelyn only wanted to go home. On the drive back, Maya leaned against her shoulder, whispering, "I'm proud of you, Mom." The word slipped out naturally, and neither of them corrected it. The weeks that followed felt lighter. Strangers sent flowers. A local school named their annual charity event after her. Veterans began visiting the house to thank her personally. But Evelyn never let it change her. She still cooked breakfast at dawn, still checked the locks twice before bed, still signed her letters simply, "Love, Evelyn." One afternoon, Maya came home early from work. She found Evelyn sitting on the porch, holding a photo album. The pages were old, corners frayed. Inside were pictures of her mother, smiling, young, radiant. Maya froze. "Where did you get that?" "Your father gave it to me before we married," Evelyn said softly. "He wanted me to understand the woman who raised you." Maya sat beside her, eyes scanning the photos. "She was beautiful." "She was," Evelyn agreed. "And brave." "You get that from her." Maya looked at her surprised. "You really think I'm brave?" Evelyn nodded. "You faced your pain. You turned around and made it right. That takes more courage than running into any battlefield." Maya swallowed hard. "I used to think forgiving you meant betraying her. But now I think maybe loving you honors her." Evelyn smiled through tears. "She'd be proud of you, Maya." They sat there together until the sun dipped low, golden light spilling over the porch. The air smelled like blooming jasmine and peace. Inside, Thomas was making dinner, badly, as usual. He burned the garlic bread again, filling the house with smoke. "Well," he said, waving a towel, "some traditions never die." Maya laughed, the kind of laugh that sounded like healing. Evelyn joined in, coughing through giggles. And for the first time in years, the house felt like home again. Not because it was perfect, but because everyone inside had learned how to forgive. Later that night, as Evelyn tucked the medal back into its case, Maya walked up behind her. "You know," she said quietly, "you didn't just save 15 Marines." Evelyn turned. "Oh? You saved us too." Evelyn reached out and pulled her close. Then it was all worth it. Outside, the wind rustled the trees, carrying with it the faint echo of boots on gravel, a reminder that every act of courage leaves footprints somewhere. And in that moment, surrounded by love and laughter, Evelyn finally believed what everyone had been saying all along. She wasn't just forgiven, she was found. 2 months had passed since the medal ceremony. Life had fallen into a rhythm that felt almost fragile in its calm. Evelyn spent her mornings tending the small garden she'd planted out back, coaxing roses from the soil as though she could will new beginnings to bloom. Maya had started volunteering at a veterans center, reading letters aloud for the older men who couldn't see well anymore. Thomas joked that the 3 of them had turned into an inspirational poster. Then the phone started ringing. Reporters again, only this time their voices carried a sharper edge. "Mrs. Miller, would you like to comment on new claims about the Fallujah rescue?" She hung up unsettled. The next morning, a headline spread across her screen. "Hero's story questioned. Missing Marine found." Maya rushed into the kitchen holding her phone. "Mom, look at this." The article claimed that one of the 15 Marines had never been properly accounted for. A man named Sergeant Cole Donovan, missing in action, presumed dead, was now allegedly alive and had a very different version of the story. Evelyn's face went pale. "Cole?" she whispered. Thomas frowned. "You know him?" "He was the youngest. Barely 20. I thought he didn't make it." By afternoon, news vans were outside their gate. Commentators speculated on live TV. Was the heroic nurse hiding something? Did someone else save the Marines? Maya watched in horror as online comments turned cruel. "This is wrong," she muttered. "You saved them." "I saw the letter." Evelyn just sat in silence, eyes far away. That night she barely ate. "If he's alive," she said quietly, "then maybe the truth's more complicated than any of them know." 3 days later, a military jeep stopped in front of the house. When the door opened, a tall man stepped out, scars running down his neck. Evelyn froze. "Cole," he smiled faintly. "Didn't think you'd remember me." Maya stood at her side, protective. "You're the one starting those rumors?" Cole shook his head. "Not me." "The media twisted what I said. I told them she saved us, but they wanted a scandal. I came here to fix it. Inside, over coffee, he told them everything. After the rescue, he'd been separated from the unit during evacuation, captured for weeks before finally being found. When he came home, he discovered Evelyn's name attached to their story, but by then, the details had blurred. They wanted me to say she exaggerated, he said. I refused. Guess that's why they printed it anyway. Evelyn exhaled shakily. So you're here to clear my name? I owe you my life, Cole replied. But there's more. While I was in the hospital, a nurse there showed me a picture of your husband. Turns out he was my mother's doctor before she passed. Thomas blinked. Your mother was, Helen Donovan? Cole nodded. She died the same year Maya's mom did. They were in the same ward. The connection hung in the air, electric. Evelyn looked between them. Are you saying your mother knew Thomas's first wife? She did, Cole said softly. And she told me something before she died. That Evelyn Miller was the reason she lived long enough to say goodbye to her son. Maya's eyes widened. So you knew my mom's doctor and your mother knew Evelyn. Cole smiled. Small world, huh? The twist of fate left everyone quiet. Thomas rubbed his temples. All these years I thought the past was behind us. Turns out it was circling back. That night, social media lit up again, this time with Cole's video statement. He posted footage of himself standing beside Evelyn, explaining the truth, praising her bravery. Don't believe everything you read, he said to the camera. Some heroes are just too humble to argue. Within hours, the tide turned. Comments shifted from doubt to admiration. We owe her an apology. The media should be ashamed. Real courage speaks for itself. But one journalist wouldn't let go. A woman named Lila Chase published a follow-up article claiming Evelyn had benefited from the fame, speaking fees, sponsorships, donations. Evelyn slammed the laptop shut, shaking her head. I never took a cent, not one. Maya stepped forward. Then we fight back. We show them who you really are. The next morning, she organized a live stream from the Veterans Center. Cameras rolled as Maya introduced her stepmother to a room full of men and women whose lives she'd touched. One by one, they told their stories, how Evelyn had paid their hospital bills, helped their families, sat through sleepless nights in hospice wards. No one needed a script. Truth filled the room like light. When it was over, Maya faced the camera. You wanted to know if she gained something from being called a hero? Her voice cracked. She did. She gained peace, and she gave it to all of us. The stream went viral again, but this time for the right reasons. Donations poured in for the Veterans Center, none of which Evelyn kept. She directed every penny to rehab programs for injured soldiers. One evening, Cole returned, carrying an envelope. I found this while going through old files, he said. Inside was a photo. Evelyn, years younger, crouched beside a wounded Marine, blood on her hands and sandstorm wind whipping her hair. Someone took it the day you saved us. I thought you should have it. Evelyn stared at the image, tears blurring her vision. I didn't even know anyone took this. It's proof, Maya said softly. The truth doesn't need defending forever. It finds its way. Thomas framed the photo that night, hanging it beside the medal. Let them talk, he said. We'll keep living. Weeks later, life settled again. Reporters moved on. The garden bloomed brighter than ever. But sometimes when Evelyn watered the roses at dawn, she'd think about how close she'd come to being buried by lies, and how the people she'd once lost had become her greatest defenders. Maya joined her one morning, barefoot on the dewy grass. Do you ever wish you'd stayed silent about the Marines? Evelyn smiled. No, because silence lets other people write your story. Speaking up just once, let me finish mine. The sun climbed higher, bathing them in gold. The scandal was gone, the peace returned, but the lesson stayed. The world could twist the truth, but love, once spoken with courage, untwisted everything. The house was quiet for once. Morning light spilled through the kitchen window, landing softly on Evelyn's hands as she poured coffee. Maya sat across the table, her textbook spread out, half reading, half watching her stepmother. The silence between them wasn't heavy anymore, it was warm, the kind of peace that grows after surviving a storm. Outside, autumn leaves drifted lazily across the yard, the wind carrying faint echoes of laughter from down the street. It had been 3 months since the scandal, the interview, the press, the long nights of rebuilding. Evelyn had stayed strong through all of it, but the weight of those years still showed in her eyes sometimes, like a shadow that refused to leave. Maya finally spoke. "You ever think about leaving this place? Maybe starting over somewhere new?" Evelyn smiled faintly. "And leave the house your father built? The one that saw every version of us, angry, broken, healing." She looked around. "No, this place has ghosts, but they're ours. I'd rather face them than run." Maya nodded. "You sound like Dad." Evelyn's eyes softened. "He said the same thing when we first bought it." He wanted roots, something solid. For a moment, they just sat in quiet remembrance. 2 women tied by one man's love, and one long road to forgiveness. The doorbell shattered the calm. Evelyn frowned. "Who could that be this early?" Maya rose and peeked through the window. Mom, I think you should see this." Outside, parked along the street, were 3 black vans. Not police, not delivery trucks. Military. 15 men and women stepped out in formation, uniforms pressed, boots gleaming, medals catching the morning sun. Every one of them carried the same emblem on their sleeves, the golden anchor and eagle of the U.S. Marines. Evelyn froze. "No, it can't be." Maya turned, confused. "Do you know them?" Evelyn's heartbeat roared in her ears. She walked to the door slowly, each step heavier than the last. When she opened it, the lead Marine stepped forward, tall, broad, a scar across his temple, eyes kind but steady. "Mrs. Carter?" he asked. She nodded, her throat tightening. He smiled faintly. "Ma'am, I'm Major Ryan Holt. We met once. You probably don't remember. Camp Lejeune. You were organizing care packages for families during deployment." Evelyn blinked. "I remember the program. But why are you here?" The Major looked over his shoulder at the others, then back at her. "We're here because of a promise." Behind him, the Marines stood in silent respect, their hands clasped behind their backs. Maya stepped forward, eyes wide, unsure what she was witnessing. The Major continued, his voice thick with emotion. 15 years ago, there was a mission in Kandahar. A convoy ambushed, supplies destroyed. We were trapped for days. One of our pilots volunteered for a rescue run he wasn't supposed to take. His name was Captain Daniel Carter. Evelyn's hand flew to her mouth. "He didn't make it back," Ryan said quietly. "But before that final flight, he recorded a message. Said if anything ever happened to him, we were to find his family, his wife and daughter, and make sure they knew he didn't die for nothing. Said his last request was simple. If you ever meet them, tell them they're the reason I kept fighting." Maya's knees buckled slightly. Evelyn grabbed her, steadying her. "We tried," Ryan went on. "For years we tried to find you. But the records got buried, addresses changed. Until a few weeks ago, one of our men saw your interview. Recognized your name. Recognized him in you." Evelyn's eyes brimmed with tears. You knew him?" Ryan nodded. "Every single one of us owes our life to your husband. Without him, none of us would have made it home." Maya couldn't speak. She just stared at the line of Marines, 15 soldiers standing in her front yard, eyes filled with gratitude and grief and pride. Evelyn whispered, "Why today?" Ryan smiled gently, "Because today was the day he saved us." For a long moment, the world seemed to stand still. The wind carried the faint rustle of flags down the street. Somewhere, a neighbor paused, drawn by the sight of the uniforms gleaming in the morning light. Then Ryan reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, worn from years of being handled. "We found this in the flight log. It was addressed to you, ma'am." Evelyn's hands trembled as she took it. Her name was written in her husband's handwriting, slanted, confident, familiar. She hadn't seen it in 15 years. Maya leaned closer as Evelyn unfolded the paper. Her breath hitched as she read, "Evelyn, If you're reading this, it means I couldn't keep my promise to come home. But I want you to know I kept my other one. The one I made when I first saw you in that diner with paint on your hands and a spark in your eyes. I promised to make you proud, to fight for something bigger than myself. I kept that one, Evie. You and Maya, you were always my reason. If life ever tests you, remember this. Strength doesn't mean never breaking. It means breaking and rebuilding anyway. If the Marines ever find you, let them remind you that love outlives death. Always. Daniel By. The time she finished, Evelyn was crying silently. Maya's hand slipped into hers. Major Ryan stepped forward, holding out a small wooden box. There's one more thing. We brought him home. Evelyn opened the box slowly. Inside lay a neatly folded flag and a medal engraved with her husband's name. Maya touched the edge of the flag, her voice breaking. He saved you all? Ryan nodded. Every last one of us. And when we saw what you've been through, how your own family turned on you, how you stood tall through everything, we realized we owed you more than just thanks. Evelyn looked up, bewildered. What do you mean? Ryan motioned, and one of the Marines stepped forward, handing Maya a sealed envelope. Captain Carter's death benefit and posthumous commendations were never processed properly. Bureaucracy failed you, but we fixed that. His estate, the pension, everything. It's yours now. It's the least we can do. Evelyn's breath caught. I don't need that, Ryan smiled. It's not about need, ma'am. It's about honor. The Marines saluted in unison, a sharp, echoing sound that cut through the morning air. Evelyn and Maya stood there, tears streaming down their faces, as the 15 soldiers who owed their lives to Daniel Carter stood at attention in their front yard. The Marines stayed for hours. Neighbors gathered quietly outside the gate, phones lowered, eyes wide. No one dared interrupt. What they were seeing felt sacred, a moment suspended between grief and grace. Inside, Evelyn served coffee, her trembling hands steadied by Maya's gentle touch. The Marines filled the living room, the same space that once echoed with arguments and shattered glass. Now it was filled with silence, heavy but peaceful. Ryan stood near the mantel, eyes fixed on the family photo of Daniel, Evelyn, and a 6-year-old Maya, frozen in a time before war, before loss, before bitterness. He turned to Evelyn. You said earlier you thought your husband built this house to hold memories. I think he built it to bring people home, even when he couldn't. That broke her. Evelyn covered her mouth, sobbing softly. Maya stood behind her, resting a hand on her shoulder. Mom, she whispered, the word finally free of resentment. Ryan continued, his tone gentler. You should know something else. Every year since that mission, on this exact day, we gather to honor him. But this time, we wanted you to be part of it. Evelyn looked up, eyes glistening. Honor? Him? How? The Marines exchanged looks. Ryan nodded to his team. One of them stepped outside, and moments later they carried in a large framed plaque. It was beautifully crafted, engraved in gold letters. He fought for his brothers in arms, but lived for his family at home. Beneath the plaque were 15 signatures, every Marine who survived that day. Evelyn pressed her hand against her mouth, shaking her head in disbelief. He would have never wanted a monument. Ryan smiled softly. No, ma'am. He'd have wanted this. He gestured to her and Maya. He'd have wanted his family whole again. Maya swallowed hard, her voice trembling. I don't deserve to be part of that. Ryan turned to her, his expression firm but kind. You're wrong, kid. You're the reason we found her. Your story reached us. Your voice made us remember him. Maya blinked, confused. My story? Evelyn looked at her too. Ryan explained. That interview you did, where you stood up and said you regretted hurting your stepmom? That went viral in a veterans forum. Someone posted it saying, this girl talks about her stepmom like my captain used to talk about his wife. That's how we knew. You gave us the missing piece. The room fell silent. Maya's eyes flooded. She turned to Evelyn, whispering, I'm so sorry for everything I said to you. Everything I did. I thought you were taking him away from me, but you were the only part of him that stayed. Evelyn pulled her in without hesitation, wrapping her arms around the daughter who once hated her. Both women cried quietly, finally letting go of years of guilt and grief. When they finally broke apart, the Marines were standing at attention again. Heads bowed, Ryan said softly, "Permission to speak freely, ma'am?" Evelyn smiled weakly. "Always." He stepped forward, his voice steady. "When we got trapped that night in Kandahar, Captain Carter didn't panic. He didn't even hesitate. He said, 'I've got something worth dying for, a promise I made to 2 women back home.' None of us understood then. Now we do." He looked directly at Maya. "He wasn't just your father or your husband. He was the reason we learned what love really means." Later that evening, when the Marines left, the street felt strangely alive. Every neighbor watching, some crying, others clapping silently as the soldiers drove away. Evelyn and Maya stood together on the porch, watching the taillights fade into the horizon. "You know," Maya said quietly, "I used to wish Dad would come back one more time, just to see what I've become. But I think he just did, through them." Evelyn smiled, eyes still wet. "He'd be proud of you." "Of both of us," Maya turned to her. "You think so?" "I know so," Evelyn whispered. "Because you didn't just say sorry. You changed, and that's what he always believed in. Redemption." They went back inside, the golden sunset painting the walls in warm light. The house, once cold and divided, now felt alive again. On the mantel, beside Daniel's old photo, Evelyn placed the folded flag and the letter. Then carefully she hung the plaque above the fireplace. For the first time in years, she smiled. Not out of relief but peace, 3 weeks later. The story of the Marines' visit spread everywhere. News outlets, social media, veterans' blogs. People shared clips, calling Evelyn the forgotten hero's wife, and Maya the daughter who redeemed her father's legacy. But Evelyn didn't chase attention. She didn't need validation anymore. Her healing had already happened, right there in her own living room. Still, one afternoon, a letter arrived. It was from the Department of Defense. Inside was a short note. "Mrs. Carter, your husband's story has inspired countless servicemen and families. The department has approved a memorial scholarship in his name, the Captain Daniel Carter Foundation, dedicated to supporting widows and children of fallen soldiers." Evelyn held the letter to her chest, eyes glistening once more. Maya whispered, "Mom, look." Outside, a group of neighborhood kids were playing. One of them, a boy no older than 7, had taken off his cap and was pretending it was a Marine's helmet, saluting toward their house. Evelyn laughed through her tears. "You see that? That's him. Still protecting. Still inspiring." Maya wrapped her arm around her. He never really left. They stood there together, the late sun turning the sky gold. A soft wind brushing against the flag that now waved proudly from their porch. Evelyn looked up at it and murmured, "You brought them home, Danny. But you also brought us back to life. Sometimes, the people we push away are the ones fate will use to bring us back to the truth. Forgiveness doesn't erase pain. It transforms it into power and love. Real love never dies. It simply finds new ways to return home."